and players mobbing.
But Michael Jordan is not only the best basketball player, but he's the most exciting basketball player to ever play.
Tatum fires away, pumps it in, 51 for Jason Tatum.
The Big Three NBA podcast is powered by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Welcome to another edition of the Big Three NBA podcast. I'm your host, Sherrod Blakely, and I have a special guest today. Good friend of the program, Jacob Tobey of 9 News NBC in Denver, Colorado. He is a native of Sandwich, Massachusetts, not to be confused with Cape Cod, although many often confuse the two, as he knows all too well. He's also an alum of CLNS Media, so it's just like family coming back home. Welcome to the podcast, my friend. How you doing?
When you asked, I couldn't say no because you pretty much raised me in the business when I was in college, so this is me returning the favor. Okay.
This is why Jacob is one of my favorite people, because that literally came without any prompting, any payments on my behalf, although there may be a payment coming your way. That's another story, another day. Bottom line is the Denver Nuggets, the team that you follow out there, is coming to Boston for a game between the defending champs, the Nuggets, and the team that wants to be the champs in the Boston Celtics. And just right off the bat, what has it been like this past few months in this post-championship afterglow that the Denver Nuggets are still kind of in the midst of?
Yeah, it's been interesting. Like for a franchise that hadn't won it, it took 47 years. And for me, I've been here for this is my fourth year in Denver now, and so I've been truly felt the hurt or the pain. A lot of my colleagues have because they've been here for 20 or 30 years. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of hurt in this city that they haven't been able to do it. And it was, they kept losing to the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, and for them to sweep LeBron, it was a big deal. It was a big deal just to get to the finals. It was a really big deal to win it. And so the parade was crazy. I was in the parade. I was on one of the fire trucks. I was with the rookies. So I was with Peyton Watson and Christian Brown. And Peyton Watson wasn't even old enough to drink, but he was partaking, and I had a good time. So it was fun to be a part of that and just to feel the celebration aspect of it. Denver's kind of turning into, I'm not going to say it's at the Boston level of sports cities in America in terms of over 20, 30 years, but it's up there right now in current sports cities as one of the best in the world. So it's been a lot of fun to cover this team, but you wouldn't necessarily know if you didn't know they won the championship. Probably couldn't tell if you talk to the guys or interview them. I mean, covering Jokic for a living is it's quite interesting. He is a big goofy guy and so casual and so nonchalant and so not an NBA star that you just wouldn't know he's an NBA champion. Like the second they won, you heard him. He's the job's done. We can go home now. That's literally the most famous line of the finals. And he went right back home to his horses in Serbia and chilled and had a great summer from what we saw on social media. So no, you couldn't tell that this team had won the championship. They don't carry themselves like that. They're obviously hungry. You can tell they're hungry to do it again. But you could never really see them flaunting it or talk. They mostly talk about it is Michael Malone, the head coach. That his big thing this year is, they're the hunted. Everyone's going to want to go out and beat them. And they've lost some games this year where you can for sure see that, where they haven't, lost in years past. So I think that's kind of how you can tell. But for the most part, you really can't that they won it. You really can't tell.
Yeah, they've been very good and very consistent. They've been in that top tier of teams from a record standpoint out west pretty much all season, but you don't hear much talk about them. It's very similar to last year, and as far as there's Team X, Team Y, Team Z. Oh yeah, they're the Nuggets. And this year we're talking a lot about the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are having an unbelievable season. Oklahoma City Thunder, they seem like they're 2 or 3 years ahead of schedule when the way they're playing. And oh, by the way, the defending champion Denver Nuggets are in the conversation as well. How has that gone over with them? Because are they embracing that even though they're the champion, it feels as though in many respects they're flying below the radar again?
They're so used to it, and they didn't care. I think deep down there's a little bit of it that they care. Maybe last year, I think more so. And Michael Malone kind of talked about this specifically after they swept the Lakers. Like, it was more so the MVP stuff. I think last year that he kind of let on that Joker did in fact slightly care a little bit more than usual last year about the MVP race. But for the most part, it's just that the way Denver is looked at, like, it's in a weird time zone. They're not on national TV a ton because of the time zone. Right. And so people, I grew up and I barely watched any Nuggets games growing up on the East Coast. Like, unless it was a playoff game with Carmelo or, when he was there, like, I never knew anything about the Nuggets. Like, it was wild. And so they're just never on TV. And they got more national TV games this year for sure. They got some, they played on Christmas in back-to-back years, which is super important, both at home, both wins, both great games. So that's helped a little bit, to get the news out that they're a good team. But no, it's been the same story. And I just don't, it all starts with Nikola, and he just doesn't care. He went on Michael Porter Jr.'s podcast a couple months ago, which is crazy that he did it because he hates doing media, but he's his teammate. And he just doesn't want to be famous. And he says when his career's over, he hopes nobody knows his name. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. People are going to know who he is for the rest of his life.
Making that really hard to do.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard when you make that much money, and you're entering top 30 ever, top 20, and who knows. But he just doesn't care. So that really trickles down, I think, to everyone else. Now, the city cares. The media people in this town care that the love's still not being shown or whatever. But at the end of the day, if they go out and win another title, people won't necessarily remember, they weren't that much, talked about during the regular season.
Yeah, and if you look at his numbers this year, I mean, they're pretty consistent, although they're rebounding from his career average in terms of rebounds. That's noticeably up. But, 25 points, 12 boards, 9 down, pretty much a triple-double every night. It's kind of scary to ask the question, but watching him play, I've thought about it, and I need to hear from someone who sees him on a day-in, day-out basis. Is he getting better with time?
Yeah. Yes. I mean,
which is crazy for a guy that's already won 2 league MVPs to still looks like he's getting better.
Yeah, it's nuts. Like, he's breaking, all these records are like Wilt's records, and it doesn't happen too often. And he is getting better. I think, from someone that sees him play every night, like I do, his scoring. I know his scoring ability. I straight up know the dude could average 35 if he wanted to. Whatever Embiid's doing right now, Jokic on the offensive end, because Embiid's probably the best offensive player in the game right now offensively. Jokic is the best overall, in my opinion. But Embiid's, I think, probably, maybe up there in terms of best offensive players. Jokic could average 35 easily if he wanted to. He just doesn't care. He went through a weird shooting slump. I think at the end of November and into December, it was odd. He was shooting below I think it was 35% or something from the field. But then in the last couple of weeks, he had a stretch where he was shooting 85% from the field, 86%. He just doesn't miss that often. He takes what the game gives him. That's what he preaches. And he is getting better. His rebounding's up, like you mentioned, and you just see it. He's in the best shape of his life. Early on, that was the knock on him. He's the big, goofy, chubby guy coming off the bench. That's good, but he's just not in shape. And he's really tuned into his body and routine. And he talked about that the last couple of weeks on the podcast with MPJ as well. His routine has gotten so good. And, it starts in the weight room for him. I think he lifts after every game, which is nuts. And he keeps that up. And so, yeah, I think his body has played a big part of how he's gotten, a little bit more athletic. I think the defense showed last year in the playoffs. I did a story with him, guarding Bam Adebayo in the finals, and he was very effective guarding him in the finals. So he's getting better. It's crazy to say. It's wild to say, but it's true.
Yeah, not he's getting better, and I think part of it is just evolution as a player.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
But the Nuggets are missing a pretty integral piece from a year ago in Bruce Brown, who signed with Indiana and has now been traded away from Indiana to Toronto. But the thing about Bruce was that it just seemed that whatever the Nuggets needed, he could provide. If they needed another scorer, if they needed a guy who could defend, if they needed a guy who would just be, a pest and irritant defensively, he was able to provide that. And I've been pleasantly surprised at how Denver has still been able to remain in that top tier of teams out west without a guy who's so instrumental. And I don't know if it's been one guy that has maybe filled that void, but what's been the key for the Nuggets to being able to absorb a loss of such a just kind of a glue guy like that and still be able to find similar success that they're used to?
Yeah, it's wild. Like, you always talk about how a guy fits. Bruce fit from day freaking one. It was so freaking obvious how good he was with his team. And he was a great guy, overlooked in free agency. Michael Malone called him on day 2 and was like, why are you still available? Like, that's literally the first question he asked him. And he fit in super well. And they just couldn't pay him. It's straight up that simple. They just couldn't pay the man. Because I think he would have wanted to stay here if they had the money, but he can't pass that bag up. And he got that bag, but he's now in another country. So it's wild how the NBA works. But Peyton Watson, I think they always envisioned him to be a Bruce Brown type. And I don't mean like their bodies are totally different. Peyton's much longer and more athletic. But I just mean a defensive focused guy that can also make timely shots and do a little bit of everything. Like Peyton Watson's, his story's wild too, because like he barely played at UCLA and he was drafted in the first round. That's just like, people seeing his athleticism in the body and the potential he had. And he didn't play at all until the last 5 games, 5 or 10 games last season and made an impact and kind of earned Michael Malone's trust a little bit more. And that was their vision, I think, going into the offseason. We'll lose Bruce, don't have a ton of money. We have a first-round pick on a rookie contract. Let's use him, and hopefully he makes that next step. Now, he has obviously gone through ups and downs like most rookies and second-year players do, but Michael Malone has put him in the end-of-game lineups over Michael Porter Jr. at times, which, a regular NBA fan that doesn't watch the Nuggets would be like, really? Like Michael Porter Jr., like he's one of the best shooters in the league. Yes, and his defense has gotten better. His rebounding got way better. You saw that in the finals when he was struggling with his shot. But they just love Peyton Watson. Dude, his nickname Swatson because he's swatting away all these shots. I mean, that's literally what they're calling him here in the Mile High City. And so he's been super impressive. Reggie Jackson did not play well last year when he got here. He's a Colorado kid, grew up in Colorado Springs, and they re-signed him in the summer, which was a tad bit surprising just because of the way he played for them down the stretch. But he's been pretty good off the bench as that second guard. And they use Justin Holiday and him interchangeably a little bit in the backcourt. Justin's been a great vet for the team. But I think it kind of really is all about Pete Watt, about Swatson. He kind of he's got a different energy about him. He's a confident kid. He's a hard worker. And, like I said, man, like he was enjoying himself at the parade. Like he didn't play a ton for the Nuggets during their championship run, but he saw what it takes. He's been around great players. So I kind of go to him, but you can't forget about Reggie Jackson too. Now he's kind of the more offensive guy. Peyton's the defensive guy. So that's how they've kind of made it work a little bit. But, yeah, it's interesting. And who knows? I think Bruce Brown's got a team option next year. So whatever Toronto does, maybe he ends up back here in Denver if they work it out. I don't know, but it's been mostly Peyton Watson, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really struck me when I look at this degree as being similar, in that you have players to be successful, and those roles, I think, often involve a certain amount of sacrifice. And it just seems as though the Denver Nuggets collectively are willing to do that. And one guy I wanted to really talk to you about that is Aaron Gordon, who really his entire game, we're thinking if he could ever become a sort of kind of 3-and-D-ish kind of guy, a bigger 3-and-D guy, because he's not ever going to be a guy who knock down shots. And lo and behold, he's kind of not right now.
Yeah, he's sorry, you kind of froze there for a second. He's Jokic has said it a couple times. They don't win the championship without Aaron Gordon. Like, they just don't. Because I think like the expectations of him in Orlando were so high, and he just isn't that number one guy, and that's totally okay. Like, I get it, you're a high pick, like, but at the same time, like, when the trade was made, that trade was a blowout in favor of the Nuggets. Like, that is an absolute freaking steal, and well worth it. But we all were wondering what the fit would be like. Was he coming over here to try and be the star, or was he coming over here to fit in? And it was the latter part. He fit in. The front office of the Nuggets have done a great job of finding people that fit in. Bruce, Aaron Gordon, Reggie. They've drafted decently well. So, like, I love Aaron Gordon because he's a super calm guy. He's a super chill guy. He's really just fit the Nikola Jokic style of, I'm not a star, I'm going to do my role, do my job. He can defend 1 through 5 pretty much. He can rebound. He can hit the timely shots, like you said. He'll posterize anybody in his way. Like, he had that Christmas Day dunk last year against the Suns, which was pretty famous moment in the season for the Nuggets. And they really don't win it without him. He's been a perfect fit. He can play some backup 5. He's done that this year. If they don't want to use DeAndre Jordan. The Nuggets lost Jeff Green too, which we former Celtic, which we haven't really talked about, but they kind of lost another front court piece there. And Aaron Gordon's playing a little bit more minutes and can play those positions really well. So versatility on this team, like, you have to be versatile to play for Michael Malone in the Nuggets. Like Nikola Jokic demands versatility. He demands you to think the game. And Aaron Gordon, for me, like, his basketball instincts are actually much higher than I assumed or thought they would be. Like, I just didn't know much about him. And he just has fit in and doesn't talk a lot and keeps to himself. And he was jumping like a little boy on Christmas when he won the championship. And I was in the locker room with him. He was going crazy. So he's been perfect. He really has.
Great. Now, with the Celtics being atop the NBA standings most of the season, I'd imagine you've had a chance to see them play a time or two this year. What are your impressions of the Celtics this year? And not only in light of what they've done this year, but just having grown up in Massachusetts, you've seen some good Celtics teams. You've seen some bad ones too. How does this group stack up to some of the Celtics teams you've seen previously?
Oof, that's a tough question. Like, they're arguably, the big three of KG, Pierce, and Ray.
That other big three. Yep, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. The old big three, the original one, they were, I don't know, KG was like at the end of his prime, maybe. Paul Pierce, same thing. I mean, this team is in the middle of it. And that's the difference. Like, I think they're more talented than that team, I think. The bench maybe is maybe a discussion to have between the 08 bench and this bench, but the starting 5, to me is much, much more talented. And just the way Tatum's playing, like, he's early on last year. He was an MVP candidate. You can surely put him as an MVP candidate this year too. The way Jalen's played, the way that Jalen has lived up to signing the big deal, I think is important. Because when you sign that big deal, you can relax a little bit. To me, it didn't seem like JB's really relaxed. I think he's been pretty much pedal to the metal. And people in this state know Derek White super well. He's from Colorado. He's from Parker, Colorado, and played for University of Colorado. And the head coach was Tad Boyle. I've talked to him a bunch because I call their games, and he's been super impressed with the way he's fit in and has taken the next step. And they are the most talented team in the NBA. I think that's, a pretty good statement, a pretty safe bet to make that they're the most talented team in the NBA. It's interesting how they lost to the Warriors. I don't know if that's like a mentally thing. They just can't get over the Warriors thing, because like they're way better than the Warriors. So that was an interesting game, I think. But all in all, I mean, they're better than the Nuggets. I can say that right now. They're better than the Nuggets. It's close, but they're better. They're more talented. They have maybe one more piece. And they're undefeated at home. That's tough. It's going to be tough to go in there and win, no matter if you got the two-time MVP in Jokic or not. Like, it's going to be a great game regardless. I can't wait to see it. The matchups between these two teams the last couple of years have been great matchups.
Yeah, they have. And you had touched on it earlier about Jokic, MVP candidacy and things of that nature. If you had to pick your top 5 MVP candidates, and we'll just fast track Jokic through the line and put him on your top 5 list, who are the other 4 that you feel are in that top 5 MVP candidate conversation?
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, OKC Shea is just a baller. And I was working in Oklahoma when he was traded. So I was in Tulsa, went down to cover the Thunder for a bit in Oklahoma City. And it was the summer that Paul George was traded away for Shea. And so I saw him his rookie year with Chris Paul, and you could see it. But I don't know if you could see this. It was, he was a great player his rookie year, but he's a phenomenal player now. So he's in there. Embiid, as a guy that listens to talk radio every day and listens to Denver media go back and forth between Jokic and Embiid and Jokic, and Embiid's, I think, right now the MVP. It's close, but I think he's the MVP right now, so he's probably number 1 on the list. So you have him, Jokic, Shea, throw Tatum in there because they, have been in the mix for the best record in the NBA for the whole season. You have to have a guy on there like that. I mean, there are a bunch of other guys to put on the list. It's kind of hard for me to pick that 5th one, but those 4 I think are locks for me in terms of MVP. And it could simply come down to like, who's on the best team when it's all said and done. Like, because the stats are obviously all comparable. It just could come down to who's on the best team playing the best basketball, later on in the season when it matters most. And it could be Tatum, it could be Jokic, it could be Embiid. But right now I probably would say Embiid is. And it's great for the league to 2-time MVP Jokic big man, potentially 2-time big man MVP and Embiid. Like, that's great. I think, the big man is back. Shaq's talked about it a ton. And so I think it's making the league better.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is good to see because, it got to the point where there was some talk about, like, for All-Star, or not All-Star, but for positions for the All-Star game, going positionless because you didn't have enough centers to be out there. And there really does seem to be this kind of sense of renaissance for NBA big men. With the Celtics, as you mentioned, they're 20-0 at home this year. They've best start in franchise history, which this group has already etched its place in history, but obviously they feel there's still work to be done. And the Nuggets are 11-10 on the road this year. So again, anytime you go in more games and lose on the road, you got to feel good about that. But what are your expectations when these two meet on Friday? Because it's a huge game for both franchises. Not a chance to get a victory, but this could be setting the table for a potential matchup in June. What do you expect to see when these two meet on Friday?
Yeah, I thought last year it was setting the table. Quite frankly, that was my pick. Now selfishly, I kind of wanted to come home for a couple games in the finals, so I was being selfish. But I really did think Nuggets Celtics finals. And it's funny to think that last year it was possible that the Avalanche hockey and the Bruins hockey could meet in the Stanley Cup, and it could set up the same way this year too. So it'd be funny if it was Boston, Denver, and both. But on Friday, I think Jokic obviously is going to pretty much get what he wants. I think Porzingis has been a great rim protector, and we'll make it a little difficult on him. But Jokic is so crafty, it's really tough to defend him. He's probably got a quicker step down low on Porzingis than most centers in the NBA do. So I think he'll have the advantage there. It's probably going to come down to the guard play. I think can the Nuggets defend Jaylen Brown if they send help for Tatum? Can they help enough on Jaylen Brown to to maximize that defense? That's gonna be the question. I don't it's going to be a close game for sure. If I had to make a pick on it, I say the Celtics probably still continue without having lost at home, just because that's been the trend, and they're so hard to beat there. I know that crowd. Denver, I don't know if it's talked about a lot in the NBA, but Denver has a really, really good home crowd too. It's tough to play here, obviously, with the altitude. And so that the Nuggets understand what it means to play in front of a home crowd that's really, really good. And so they know going into the Garden that it's going to be tough. The X factor could be, Michael Porter Jr. Can he put up 25, 30? A couple nights ago, the Celtics or the Nuggets had Jokic, MPJ, and Murray all score 25. I mean, that's hard to beat. If they're doing that and they can defend, that's really, really hard to beat. So I would say kind of MPJ's this team's X factor. He was that way in the playoffs. He'll be that way as long as he stays in this core. If he can get hot from three and hit 6 to 8 and get going, that's a way for, I think, the Nuggets to slip in there and beat the C's for the first time. But it's going to be tough. But I think it's going to be a great game. I could see it going to overtime. I could see a really, really good game. This is probably the biggest game of the year to date, I would say.
Yeah. And Denver will come in well rested. The Celtics, they'll be rested as well. Not as well as Denver, but it's not like they got back-to-back games. It should be a good game. It should be a really, really good game. And like you, I'm eager to see what happens, because this could very well be a preview of what we'll see come June. If both of these teams can get to the finals, which again, I think that makes for a great series.
Oh, yeah.
Jacob Tobey, 9 News, NBC affiliate in Denver. Jacob, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for the positive the shout out there. Much love for you for that. And much love to our sponsors. And we're talking about Indeed.com, HelloFresh, and FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of CLNS Media Network, where new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So, again, thanks to our partners. Thanks to my good friend, Jacob Tobey. This is the Big 3 NBA Podcast. I'm your host, Sherrod Blakely, saying thanks for tuning in. Take care. Goodbye.